Hi, in this video we'll be talking about the continuation of C#, so we'll be going over lists in .NET. So a list is a class in the .NET framework that is similar to an array. So we talked about this in the notes. So in a list basically, so there's some differences. So there's an array list, then there's a different kind of list. So there's some different kinds of lists. We'll be going over basically just the general list in C#. So a list object, so unlike an array, a list object size is automatically adjusted to accommodate the number of items being stored in it. So this, I believe this is for both array lists and linked lists, but a general list is the same, so you can initialize, basically you don't have to set a fixed size, you can add elements on the fly. For an array you can't do that, you have to set a certain block of memory and indexes and then make sure, basically you can have wasted space if you don't fill all the elements in the array. But for a list you can save space because you can just add them. So you can start a list with one element and then it only have one block of memory. You can add to them as needed. But in an array, basically you can just add elements. You have to allocate like 100 blocks of memory, and then if you don't use them all, like for example, if you only then fill up 10 indexes, then you'll have 90 wasted blocks of memory. So it takes more memory space. It could slow the program down, use more computer time, and different things like that. So we've talked about this in the notes, so we'll probably just get into a code example here. So we have, so once again, to create a list, it's just like Java and C. So here we'll just say, we could have a field here, so we'll just say they have a list of type string object. We just want to call it name list. We could just call it str list. We can point it to a new list. But you have to instantiate it, so you have to point it to a new list object of the same type as well. So now this list can hold strings. So we can create a list to hold integers, so it would be similar. So we can have, for example, private list of list object type, or just of list type, for example, int. Then here we want to pass, we could call int list, points a new list of type int with empty parameters. So you can use an initialization list. So here we have, for example, we could have, for example, list of list type int. We could call this, actually that's fine. Oh, we'll just tag on private to this, so we'll have private list of array index, not array index, of list in list type int. Then here we want to call it, for example, val list, and point it to a list of list type int. So you have to use the angular brackets if you didn't notice. So these are just the less than and greater than signs. So it's, remember, in an array it uses square brackets, so just like that. But here you can also, so this is like an array initialization list. But remember, when you use an initialization list, you add the values beside the instantiation, beside the object instantiation. So the way to do that is you take out the semicolon, or just you don't put the semicolon there yet. So after the empty parameters, then you open a initialization list like that with just the curly, there's just standard curly brackets, and then here we'll just pass in some values like whatever. And then just you tag on the semicolon at the end like that. You don't have to do the white space just because like C# just formats that itself. So the compiler or the compiler, or actually basically I think this is just writer, it's just formatting the typing. I'm not sure how to turn that off. I tried to, I couldn't turn it off. So in the next example here, we'll instantiate a list object that can hold integers and initialize it, and initializes it with the values 1, 2, and 3. Oops, sorry. So the statement that we just did, it initialized or it created a list object, or initialized a list object that can hold integers and initialized them with values. The values that we added were 10, 12, and 15. So now we can do an example that creates or instantiates a list object to hold strings and initializes it with 3 strings. So instead of, because here above here we initialized a list, but we didn't fill it with any values. So here we can initialize another list and fill them with values using an initialization list, or a list initialization list. So here we could say, for example, private list of list, or a list object type string. We can call it str list2, points to new list of list object type string, pass in empty parameters, and then we can add the values here with some curly brackets. So we could say, for example, remember you'll have to include a string literal, so here we could just say that we have, for example, oranges, and then comma, we can say that we have pears, and then another string comma, we can say that we have like apples, semicolon. So those are just 3 strings. Whoops, sorry, forgot that angular bracket. Okay, so we can also add an item to a list. So we had a list, so we can just continue with the list, or we could access the other list. So here, for example, we can access str list from above. So we can say str list dot add. We can add another. We could add something here. What's happening there? Whoops. Oh, sorry. You know what? You can't do that here. So what you'll have to do is do that in the constructor. So we'll just move down. So here we'll say, for example, str list dot add, and then we can add some other things. We can add like some. We could add some more fruits, like blueberries or something. Then here we can, so we say comma after the literal, then we say we can pass another fruit here. For example, like kiwi fruits. And then here we could say that we have, for example, cocoa nuts. Actually, you know what? I don't think you can add them all together. So we'll have to write a statement each time, or we could use a loop or something. So here we'll say, for example, strlist.add, and then we can add, what do we say? So we have kiwis. And then on the next line here, we could say that we have, for example, .add, we could add coconuts. Okay, so we'll just save that. So that's pretty much it. So this list will have now 3 elements. Basically, it just holds 3 string objects, and this list is different than str list 2, which holds also 3 objects. So there's the count property. I think we've talked about that before. So a list object has a count property that's pretty. I think it's like it should be exactly the same thing as a size property in Java, or in C as well. So a list object. Actually, I'm not sure if there's a size method in C, but there isn't one in Java, I think. So there might actually also be a count. I think it actually might be called, I can't remember if it's size or count, or they might have both. But if you're interested, you can always just check the docs. So a list object has a count property that holds the number of items stored in the list. So list object has a count property, so we can demonstrate that. So list object has a count property that holds a number of items stored in the list, so it's just a count of the values, the count of the elements. So here we could show a message box here, so we can say messagebox.show. We could say that, for example, the list, we could say that the list has, for example, so that's just a string, we'll just add a string literal like that, and we'll concatenate. Then here we'll call strlist.count plus, and then we could say elements or values. And I'll just add some spacing there to format the output of the string. So we can just save that and then run it. And I'll just tell you guys what the value was. So it should say 3. Yeah, so it says the list has 3 elements that came up in a pop-up window. So we have here, for example, that's pretty much it. So we can access items in a list. So you can use subscript, or basically index notation, but I think they call it subscript notation. I'm not sure if that's 100% correct or just the author's view of how to access elements of these docs that I'm looking at, but pretty much it's just an index. So you can use subscript or index notation. So when I say subscript, I also mean that you basically can also use the word index for the same word subscript. So you can use subscript or index notation to access the items in a list, just as you can with an array. So we'll just do an example here. So we'll have another loop below this this line here. We can say for int I points to 0, I is less than strlist.count. You may have seen this before in other languages. So basically we're just saying, well, so this is a way to access items in a list. So you can loop through these values here, because you can use a for each loop, of course. You can use a normal for loop. But here we're saying for I points to 0, I is less than strlist.count, so strlist.count, it points to 3. So this is saying for int I points to 0, I is less than 3i++, so it iterates 3 times, iteration 0, iteration 1, and iteration 2. So then here we'll just open the brackets here, and then we'll say messagebox.show. Then here we're going to show that, or what we want to display is, not in a string. We want to show the actual value. So here we want to show strlist of array index, or not array, of list index I. So it's basically the same thing as an array. We're pretty much just showing the index the same way as an array. So so here we're showing, or here we are just we're accessing the index of I in a list the same way as an index in an array. So it's the same thing. It's the same way to access them. That might be because, I'm not sure if this is 100% correct, but that might be because this general list in C# is implemented as an array list. That might be not might not be 100% correct, but it might be. So here That's just a guess, I'm just guessing. If you're interested in array lists and linked lists, I do the same thing in Java. We have those videos, but we won't be covering those two. We're just going to be going over the general list. So we can do another example here. For example, or actually we could. So let me just run this to tell you guys what happens here. It should show all the values in message boxes. So let me just run this. You'll have to click OK each time to see the next value, or X. The X button or the OK button. It says that this list has 3 elements, and then I'm going to click OK. Then it says the first message box shows blueberries, the second message box shows kiwis, and the third message box shows coconuts in different pop-up windows. Then a fourth pop-up window, or whatever, I think it was fourth pop-up window comes up showing our app that didn't have anything. So we showed separate apps, basically, that came up as pop-up windows. Okay, so then now here we'll say, actually let's see how much we are. So it may need, actually we could just do this here, I think. We're gonna need so you're gonna need a file. You're gonna need a file on your desktop. So you want to save a file to your desktop with some data. So you can just add some strings in a text. Did I say this? Yeah. So in a text file. My bad if I said text box. So put a text file on your desktop with some strings on different lines, and then you can just do fruits or whatever you want. And then here, so we'll just erase this stuff here. So I think we're gonna access that item. We're gonna access the items in that text file, stream it into the list. So here we'll say, for example, actually we'll just take these lists out first. I'll just delete these. So we're gonna create an input stream. Create an input stream to the file on our desktop, or on your desktop. My path's going to be different than yours. We're going to use a path. You could put it in your IDE folder as well. So here we could say, for example, so we're gonna create an input stream to the file on our desktop. So we're gonna create an input stream to the file on our desktop to the list, and then I guess print the values or something. Okay, so we're gonna have to add the directive at the top using system.io. I believe that's to use a stream reader object. So here we'll have, for example, a stream reader. So we'll create an object reference variable of type stream reader. We'll call it input file. So remember, when you're reading data in from a file, you're creating an input stream. If you're writing data to a file, you're creating an output stream. So here we're creating an input stream, and then we're pointing that to the method file dot. Oh, sorry, we're pointing that to the file object's method openText. So dot openText. And here I'm going to pass the path here. I'm going to include the @ symbol, and then I'll do my path for my PC. I'm not sure if what I actually call the file, so let me just try to remember here. Or if it's, I might have to try it a few times, so we'll just try that first. Don't forget to include the @ symbol, and then do your path, and then that should be fine. So we're creating a stream reader object that's going to point to our path. And then here we're going to instantiate a list. So we're going to say, okay, list of, basically of type string. To list of type string, we'll just call it strList, and then we'll point it to a new list of type string object. Pass in empty parameters. So here we'll loop through the file. So here we'll say, so while the input file, dot end of stream, or so while the input file is not the end of stream, which means that there's still data in the file. Then here we'll just open a block here, and then we'll say that we want to say strList dot add. We want to add the values to the list. And we want to add input file dot read line. That's going to access each element on every line and add it to the list in a different index. So while the input file's end of stream is not ended, then while the input file is not the end of stream, or there's still data in the file, continue to process the file, and then add each element of the text file to the list in a different index. Believe we could try to go. That should be fine. Again, you could just then you could use a loop to print it out as we did before. That's pretty much it for the start of lists. So in the next video, we'll be going over passing a list to a method. So thanks for watching, guys. If you guys like the video, you can like and subscribe to support the channel for more programming and investing tutorials. In the next video, we'll be passing a list to a method, so hopefully I'll see you guys there. Thanks. Take care.